Okay, another in the series of frequently asked questions. Um, I hear this one a lot. Why doesn't the church take a position? Why doesn't the church just tell us where the Book of Mormon took place? And of course, I can't speak for the church. I don't know. But I do think that there's a couple ways to look at it. One is, I know several of the church leaders over the years have said that the geography of the Book of Mormon has not yet been revealed. And it's something that we wait on for more information. My interpretation of that is that I agree. It has not been revealed. However, I do think that the Hill Cumorah is an exception to that. And I say that because just knowing where the Hill Cumorah itself does not constitute revealing the geography of the Book of Mormon. But there is no question that in Joseph Smith's day, everyone knew where the Hill Cumorah was. And some of the critics tell me that, well, Joseph never claimed to receive a revelation about it. And to the extent that he did, as his mother Lucy said, his Wentworth letter and other things, people say, well, you could interpret it that he received a revelation or that he didn't. And I say it doesn't matter, because Oliver Cowdery was the one who Joseph relied on to write the church history in the early days. He wrote the first detailed church history of many of the events that happened with him and Joseph Smith. In fact, part of Oliver Cowdery's history is included in the Pillar of Great Price at the very end of Joseph Smith's history section. And Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery knew where the Hill Cumorah was, in my opinion, because they had been to the repository. And several people talked about, referred to hearing this from Oliver Cowdery at least, and maybe some of the others, as Brigham Young said, that they knew from reading the Book of Mormon and what is now Mormon 6:6 that Mormon had deposited all the records that he had been entrusted of the Nephites, which was piles and piles of records, in the repository in the Hill Cumorah. You can read it for yourself. Just go to Mormon 6:6 and you see it. Joseph and Oliver visited that room on multiple occasions, and it was right in the Hill Cumorah. In fact, it's actually maybe about 200 feet, maybe 100 yards from where the box was, which is something that hopefully I can talk about someday. But the repository was a room, stone room, man-made room in the Hill Cumorah. It had a stone shelf in it, according to Wilford Woodruff, and according to Brigham Young, it's full of wagon loads of plates. So, and Joseph and Oliver described them as being piled up, even on a table in the middle of the room and around the edges and under the table. It was just full of plates. And you can understand why Mormon would have needed a repository like that to do the abridgment. He was going through the plates, the records of the Nephites, finding little excerpts like Alma's teachings to his sons. In Alma 40 and 42, he talks to Coriantumr about the resurrection, for example. And these are just Alma's own words that Mormon copied onto the plates. So he had access to the originals of all those. He had access to the brass plates, to the jaredite plates, and all the records of the Nephites were in this repository where he concealed them in the ground so that the Lamanites wouldn't get them and melt down the metal and so forth. Well, if you were Joseph and Oliver and you had been in this repository and seen these plates, removed some to show to the 8 witnesses, brought them back, put them back in there, you saw the sword of Laban and the other artifacts. What more revelation would you need than that to know that this was in fact the Hill Cumorah? Because you already knew that Mormon deposited them in the Hill Cumorah. Now it's interesting also that we know the records are no longer in this room in the Hill Cumorah. We know that because David Whitmer and Oliver Cowdery both said that they'd been taken elsewhere. And we think as a result that Joseph Oliver, Hiram, and Don Carlos, and possibly David Whitmer, helped move all those plates, those wagon loads of plates, to another location, which was probably the storeroom that Amron had originally built, where he told Mormon as a young boy to go and get the records. Mormon says he went there, removed all the plates, and moved them to Cumorah. We think that Joseph Oliver and the others moved the plates back to the Amron Hill. And why would they do that, you may wonder? Well, because the people around Palmyra, and particularly in Rochester, knew that Joseph Smith had found, or claimed to find in their mind, gold plates in the Hill Cumorah. And so people were searching through the Hill Cumorah. There's accounts of people looking up at the hill at night and seeing lanterns up there, people sneaking up at night to try to dig up treasure. And so that kind of died down after a while, but Joseph and Oliver knew that once the Book of Mormon was published, and in fact it could have been even when the manuscript was being set in type, and the word started to spread about what it contained and so on. But it was the testimony of the 3 witnesses and the 8 witnesses that said that they did actually see the plates. It reaffirmed the reality of the plates, that encouraged people to go back to the hill and do more digging, try to find them. Now, Joseph and Oliver never talked publicly about the repository, as Brigham Young said. They never talked about it in meetings, but they did talk about it privately. So we don't know if people knew about this repository, or maybe if they did, they may have dug up the hill even more than they did. But at least when the Book of Mormon was published and those testimonies were contained in it, the brethren knew that it would renew the interest in trying to find these treasures. And so that makes sense that they would move the plates out of the hill in case someone did find them. All right, so I think that answers that question. We'll try another one.